Now, it's not often I find myself agreeing with Daniel Andrews, but on this, I do.
Don't take medical advice from members of parliament. Take medical and pollies. Take your advice from your GP. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your pharmacist. They're the people to talk to.
So let's get some much-needed clarity on this stoush over AstraZeneca with infectious diseases physician and microbiologist, Professor Peta Credlin, joining me now from Sydney. Professor, very simply, give us the ATAGI advice in relation to AstraZeneca.
Well, basically what they're advising is they say the preferred people or age group to get the AstraZeneca vaccine is for those over the age of 60. And that's all to do with the side effect, this very uncommon side effect, an unusual form of clotting associated with low platelets. And it occurs probably overall about 1 in 100,000, but more often in younger people. And overall with treatment now, it causes death in about 1 in a million people, 1 in 2 million people that get it. But the reason they say that is because the younger you are, proportionately the less benefit you get from the vaccine. Because if you're an 80-year-old, your chance of dying if you get COVID is about 1 in 10. At the age of 70, about 2 in 100. But if you're a 30-year-old, your chance of dying from COVID is about 1 in 10,000. Now, that's still considerably higher than 1 in a million chance of dying from the vaccine, but the relationship is a bit different. But the other thing to take into account is also the supply of the vaccines. We still don't have unlimited supply of vaccines. The AstraZeneca is the main one we've got, but by far the biggest benefit is in those over the age of 60, 70, because they have the biggest risk if COVID should spread, and relatively slightly lower side effects. So that's where that goes. The vaccine, though, was tried and used in people over the age of 18 and works in all age groups very effectively if you get 2 doses. So there's no reason a 35 or a 40-year-old can't have it. It's just relatively the benefits to them are not as big as to a 70 or 80-year-old compared to the risk. But if somebody is informed, they are willing to take that risk, then in my view, and I think ATAGI says it as well, there's no reason they can't have it. It's just that we would recommend, we'd say, look, if you can get an alternate vaccine, the Pfizer, you can access yourself to that. That would probably be better for you at this stage, but not that you can't have it.
So why would the Queensland Chief Health Officer then say this? Let's have a listen.
People need to work out where they want to get advice from. My advice is that if you're under 40, you wait and get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine.
There's a study out that I saw yesterday that the incidence of side effects from aspirin were higher than AstraZeneca.
Yes, but it doesn't tend to kill you.
There was this debate about aspirin not killing people or killing people, and she said it didn't. Of course, the facts say it does, and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, it's just all muddying the waters at a time when I think people want clarity of messages. And the point you make about AstraZeneca being recommended for those over the age of 60 doesn't mean it's banned for everyone else.
No, it's not. We use the term contraindicated if we say people should not get a drug or a vaccine. This vaccine is not contraindicated. It's just preferred to be used in people over the age of 60 because relative the benefits for them are better. Now, if somebody comes to me who's 30 and says, look, should I get the AstraZeneca vaccine? My advice would be, look, I think overall you're better off waiting a bit because the risks, are there. And also, if you wait a couple of months, you'll probably have more access. But if they still wanted to have the vaccine and they knew the real risks and they're willing to accept that, because there's lots of other things that we've got as bigger risk or if not higher risk than that in the form of drugs we give patients, I would not stop them from having it. But, that's a matter of discussion, therefore, with their GP, their doctor. And if they have made up their mind that they are willing to take that risk because of the benefits to them, which they will get from the vaccine, that's their decision. The only thing I'd mention, though, we need to make sure that if we open this up to all 30 and 40-year-olds, we still got to make sure the 70-year-olds are ahead of them in the queue. Because while we've done very well with 70-year-olds, I think about 70% have had their first dose, there's still 20 or 30% who haven't, and we need to persuade them to get vaccinated. And if we do persuade them, we need to make sure they get a ticket to go to the front of the queue and in front of anybody who's 30 or 40 years old, because they're at so much more risk if COVID should spread.
Look, I 100% agree, but this is where I get to the point where if there's any hesitancy left in that group between vaccine types, surely we just give them whatever they want. If you're 70 and the choice is that, you know, AstraZeneca and Pfizer there and you're a bit dodgy on AstraZeneca because of all of this mixed messaging, just get vaccinated has got to be the issue with older Australians, particularly when you've got only a window of 3 weeks between Pfizer jabs, but you've got 3 months between AstraZeneca jabs. How confident are we that we're going to get all this Pfizer that's been ordered and Moderna that's been ordered, that it'll turn up on time and we can really sort of kick into this vaccination rollout?
Well, I'm not sure we can necessarily predict what's going to be delivered, but the reality is the vaccines we're getting, I think, predominantly come from the US or almost entirely from the US, Pfizer and Moderna, and subsequently something called Novavax. I understand there's expectations to get a lot more in 1 or probably 2 months' time. We're getting about 300,000 doses of Pfizer a week now, and I presume in 2 months' time that might be closer to, you know, 1 million doses a week at least. So we will be in a better position, and it will probably happen. The US was limiting exports of their vaccines to, you know, very little till early mid-May. Now, because they've got a large proportion of their population vaccinated, they've supplied a lot to Canada, for instance, and I think Australia will get its contracted arrangements by then as well. So currently we can give about 1 million doses of vaccine a week, and I think we're getting close to that, about 700 to 800,000 AstraZeneca and 300,000 Pfizer. I would think that will continue for the next 2 months, so that's it should be another 8-9 million doses of vaccine that are given. But in 2 months' time, we should be able to up that to 2 million doses a week, I would have thought, if we get adequate supplies. And that really means by October, November, we should have a large proportion of our adult population vaccinated, at least with the first dose, and most of them also with the second dose. And that's also the end of winter and the end of early spring when viruses spread more often. So I think by October, November, there definitely is a light at the end of the tunnel. We will have vaccinated a large proportion of our adult population, and we'll be in a position where viruses will spread less often as well.
Goodness me, you're very positive. I hope you're right, Professor Collignon. Just quickly, do you think we should set a date for when Australia will open, and perhaps that might motivate people, if they're going to get the jab, that they'll go on and do it?
Well, I'm not sure so much a date as a percentage of the population adult that should be vaccinated. I would nominate when we get to 30 million doses of vaccine given, that will mean 70 to 80% of the population, adult population, are vaccinated, probably fully vaccinated or close to fully vaccinated. So I predict that will be about November sometime, maybe the end of the year. And the other thing will be have a warning system if we, you know, what we can do is what happens in winter in the Northern Hemisphere. There will be a lot of people vaccinated in the US, Canada and Europe, good surveillance. And what I presume will happen then is they'll have more COVID again, but it'll be much less spread, but more particularly, a lot less people will die because the people most at risk, those over 70 in particular, but those over 50, should be vaccinated, I hope, at 90% plus, and that will stop a lot of deaths and really turn it into what influenza is every year. I mean, every year in Australia, we have about up to 1,200 people die of influenza and many more thousands die of everything from the common cold to RSV and you name it. So this virus is not going to go away. It's going to be with us for years. We have to live with it, but we also have to make the risk as low as possible. And I think our general behaviour, don't go to work if you're sick, you know, all those sorts of things we need to do as well. So we spread not only less COVID, but spread less of everything else as well.
Professor Collignon, spread a bit of common sense. You've certainly done that tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.